Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Eric and I like to read. Today we're going to be doing my August wrap-up, aka my Newts wrap-up. So I just finished my last book that is part of this wrap-up, so I finished just in time. I poured myself a glass of wine and now I'm going to review all these books for you guys and let you know what I thought of each book on my prompts list for the Newts. So I have my trusty notepad here to keep me on track because I have very poor organizational skills, so we'll see how this goes. Okay, so my first book was for Defense Against the Dark Arts, and this was to read a thriller or a horror book, and for this one, I did a buddy read with Amanda and Misan, and we read Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This book I gave a 5 out of 5 stars because I could not put this down, and it was really hard for me to do a buddy read for this because I literally just wanted to keep reading the whole thing. And I'm pretty sure our buddy read lasted a total of 3 days because all of us just kind of binged through it and read the book and just powered through. We initially were going to set a goal of reading a certain amount of pages, but the book was so encapturing and it pulled us in so much that we all were speaking in our group chat and just saying we need to finish this book. And yeah, so this was a really thrilling book. I will say that I feel kind of dark and twisted because I even I called it in our group chat what was happening or what was going to happen, and then I was just joking, but then it actually turned out to happen I was joking about, and that makes me feel really dark and twisted, or my mind is very dark. But yeah, it's it is a good book. There's lots of twists and turns in this. This was the first Lisa Jewell book I've ever read, and as you can see, it still has the sticker on it because I picked it up at our secondhand bookstore. I'm glad I gave it a shot because it was awesome, and I really want to read more Lisa Jewell books. I think that if they're like this book, I'll definitely be pulled in and fly through them really quickly. So yeah, this one was definitely a success. Also, a side note, I got a new little Bulbasaur keychain over here. I just wanted you guys to see it because I was super excited about it. I played this game, and it was this claw machine game that I ended up winning, but they send it to you from China, so it came 4 months later, and here it is. It's pretty cool though. Bulbasaur is my favorite Pokemon. So next up was my second part of the Defense Against the Dark Arts prompt, and that was to read a book with demons in it or it had a water theme. So for this one, I chose Fire, and I also did a buddy read with Amanda for this one as well. I want to say I love it because I know that other people in the booktube community really like this book, but I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I mean, it's kind of the same thing that happened with Graceling. In that book, there's a lot of build-up and a lot of build-up, and then you think there's going to be this big action scene, but then it's just done like that, and there's no, I don't know, the way that this author comes to resolutions or concludes things, I'm just not a big fan of, because she pumps it up so much that something's coming, and then when it does come, it's just over in 2 pages, and I just want more from that because of all the build-up that's getting me excited about it every time. I mean, I'm still probably going to read the last book in this series because I just don't I don't like leaving series unfinished, but I don't know, it was hard to get through this book. And I feel like Amanda, she kind of had the same thoughts about this. We both ended up rating it a 3 out of 5. There's also a character in this book, and his name is Archer. And then they also refer to a lot of archers in the book, so I found that a little bit confusing. They differentiated it with capitalization of the name, but if you have a main character and you're going to be talking about archers a lot because it's a medieval themed book, don't name your character Archer. It gets confusing after a while, and you're just what is going on? But I don't know. There were some good elements to this book. I will say that I was pulled in by the medieval aspect of it because I really do like books that are set in medieval times. And there was definitely a fantastical element to this because where they were wasn't exactly fully humans all around. There were other creatures and monster things there too. So I thought that that was cool. I liked the book for the atmosphere and the environmental descriptions, but then the actual plot just kind of fell short for me. So yeah, Then I had to do Transfiguration, and the first prompt for that was to get a book with an animal on the cover. So I chose Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, and that's because there's a black snake on the front. You guys know that I've been wanting to finish this series for so long, and I was super excited to get back into this world and read this book. And I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy the book. It wasn't the final conclusion I would have hoped for, but that had no impact on how I felt about the characters. Like, the characters still brought it through for me. And normally I'm a very plot-driven person, but in this book series, I will say the characters are much more presiding for me, and I like them a lot more than the actual plot. I feel like the book series is carried by the characters, is what I'm trying to say. And there was just so much more political intrigue in this book, so much more action, and just things really picked up and happened in this book, which I did really enjoy. There were even characters in this book that I did not like in other books that I ended up liking in this book. So the fact that it made me change my opinion on some characters was pretty cool too. But yeah, just the overall ending, the overall feel of how it was just resolved, I feel could have been a little bit better. But that being said, I still did really enjoy the book, and I did really enjoy the series. I think Wicked King is probably my favorite in the entire series, just because that one, we already knew the characters, and that's when it started really picking up for me. So yeah, I think that one was my favorite, but this one was still a good conclusion to the series. Yeah. So the second part of my Transfiguration prompt was to read a book with a dragon on the cover, or it has fire on the cover or in the title. And so for this one, I chose Firefight, which is the book that I literally just finished today. And I'm giving this book a 5 stars. I was so happy to jump back into this world that Brandon Sanderson created. The first book in this series is called Steelheart, and it's essentially the YA version of the show The Boys. So it's real people fighting back against superheroes. In this book, they're called epics, and they're just they're people that have powers, and they use these powers to control cities. And so the Reckoners, which is the good group of people, are the ones fighting back against these epics and trying to kill them, which is essentially The Boys. So this was the second installment in that series, and it was just full on action packed. I rarely wanted to put this book down. The only time I would put the book down is when my eyes were closing on me because I read too much. But I was pulled into this, and it was so cool. And the atmosphere in this book is fantastic. I won't say anything else because that would be giving away what happens a little bit in the first one. But it was described so well, and I felt like I was there in this area that they're in. But you get so much more insight into more of the characters that were in the first book, and you get more insight into powers and why they have these powers, and it's just I want to tell you guys so much. I want to spoil this so bad, but I'm not going to. I will just say pick up this series because I promise you will enjoy it. And the ending of this book was really good. I want to pick up the next one right now because I just finished it, and whew, it ended in a pretty intense way. So yeah, this was a good one. And the last part of the Transfiguration prompt was to read a hardcover book or an intimidating book. So I chose a hardcover book because I didn't want to have an intimidating book, which would have been probably 500 plus pages. So I chose Behind Distant Stars, and this is part of the Fid's Crusade trilogy. This book has kind of similar vibes to the one I just showed you guys because it also deals with superheroes and villains, except in this case, you're following the storyline of the villain, and you actually feel for this villain because you know a lot of their backstory. In the first book, in Fid's Crusade, you get to learn a lot about them. I like that in this book, you learn a lot more about them because it gives you more insight into their history and how they became who they are. This one was also much more action-packed than the first one, at least I found. The villain actually feels like a human. They're not idolized in this one. You feel like they're actually a person that you know. And I think that makes you feel so much more for everything that happens to them and everyone around them. There's a pretty badass other villain in this book, as you can see on the cover. There's lots of intense battles, and hey guys, sorry if the camera angle has changed a little bit. I just got an important phone call, so I had to take that, but we'll jump back into it. I believe I was talking about this book and how the main character is a lot more human in this one, and you feel like relatable to the character. Like I said, it's a villain story, but really it's kind of like an anti-hero story, because you feel more for the villain than any of the actual superheroes in this book, or like the first book really. But I strongly suggest checking out this series. I'm really glad that the author reached out to me on my blog to read the first book, and then they graciously sent me all 3 hardcover copies of his book trilogy. I'm really looking forward to the next one to see how he concludes up the trilogy, and I can't remember if I gave you guys the rating on this or not, so 4 out of 5. But yeah, it was a good book. Then we have Muggle Studies, and that is to read a comic book or graphic novel. For this one, I chose Wonder Woman, Volume 1, which is called Blood, and this one dealt with a lot of the gods and goddesses of like Greek mythology, which I really enjoyed, and I thought it was a really fun time. The art style was also really cool. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5. I usually don't like delve too much into comic books because there's not like much you can really say about the comic book. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. 4 out of 5. It was a good time. And then the last one was Potions, and this was a book with sky in the title or on the cover. So I chose The Rose Society because there is a beautiful sky on the front of it. I mean, there's some creepy wolf eyes looking at you through the clouds, but there is a sky nonetheless. This is the second book in the Young Elites trilogy, and this one was also super action-packed. You join back up with a favorite character of mine in pretty much a lot of series I've read now. This main character of this book, Adelina, has become one of my favorites. Like, I would definitely call her one of my favorites because she's like a very morally gray character that does things that, like, you know, when there is the right thing to do, and then there's the thing that you just want them to do. And she usually does the thing you want them to do. She's very morally gray, and I love that about her. This book follows her continuing on from what was the conclusion of the first book in the Young Elites. It is essentially about, I can't really say much about this one because this is the second book in a trilogy, but in this pandemic that happened, lots of people became infected, and because they became infected, they all ended up with some sort of like scarring or something like that to show that they had been affected by this disease in the pandemic. Now, not all of them gained powers, but some of them gained powers, and now the story is about the select few that did gain powers and how they use them. And I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to give it away, but it's a very compelling series. I really enjoyed it. I'm finished the second one now. Gave this book 5 out of 5 stars because it was so good and I read it really fast, and I'm really looking forward to the last one. However, I have heard things from many people, Marcus included, that the last one is not the best. So I'm not going into it with like super high expectations, but we will see. I hope it still like is a decent book. We'll see. And the last book that I have as part of this wrap up was not actually on my TBR at the beginning of the month, but I decided to throw it in there just because. Well, not just because. We have a book club that we run and I take part in it occasionally, and it's called the Next Chapter Book Club. We actually have a group on Goodreads. I'll put the link in the description down below. But the book of the month for that one was What If It's Us by Becky Abertally and Adam Silvera. And I happened to have a first edition signed book, so I was like, you know what? I'll join in for it. Why not? And this book was actually pretty decent. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. We had a whole live stream where I discussed this book with the other booktubers that are part of this book club, and we kind of like dove down into it and talked about what we liked, what we didn't like, and stuff like that. So if you guys want to hear more about this book, you can definitely go check out that live stream. I'll put that in the link down below as well. I'll give you my Spark Notes edition of it for this one. It was a good book about one boy who's falling in love for the first time and another boy who is getting over a relationship that just ends. And the thing that I really liked about this book is that it deals with two characters that are already out of the closet, and it's not the story of like how they come out of the closet. It's the story of how they are open and happy to be who they are and just explore their sexuality. And I thought that was really cool and really fantastic about this book. And yeah, but anyway, if you want further details on the book, go check out the live stream. Hey guys, so post video filming, I actually forgot that I read another book that I forgot to mention, and that was Can I Tell You Something by Carl Christian Flores. This book is a collection of poetry, and it's like 100 different poems, and he has these really like beautifully drawn like graphics in here. I'll show you, but yeah, this book was actually pretty good. As poetry, like as far as poetry goes for me, like I don't normally like poetry that much. Or it's not that I don't like it, it's just that I find it hard to follow along. But with this one, I thought that the illustrations really helped you follow along with what the poetry or like poem was about. And I thought that this was actually really well done. So I would give this book probably a 4 out of 5 for poetry. So just to show you guys, there's like lots of different graphics in this book. And here, let me just do this. And like, I don't know, they're really cool. I think they're really well done, and it just like, it adds to the book and it adds to the poems and helps you visualize better like what they're talking about. So I really liked that about this book. And that's it for my August wrap up. I would say that I crushed the newts, but I mean, I finished the last book today, which is September 2nd. So technically I didn't, but also G said that we could take as long as we want for this one instead of just the month. So I'm going to take it. Now on to September, where, as you saw in my last video, I have a pretty ambitious TBR, so we will see if I can actually read all those books. What I want you guys to do is leave down in the comments below any thoughts you have about the books that I just shared with you and the books that I read. If you've read them, I want to know how you felt about them, see if our opinions differ, and yeah, let me know what you're reading for the next month of September. I'm always intrigued to find out what other people are reading. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon and a Ko-fi page, which I'll put in the description down below. You guys know the drill. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I post videos every Monday and Thursday, and author interviews occasionally on Saturdays. There may be an author interview happening this Saturday, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, keep on reading.